I'm not flexing, I'm just saying I should know this stuff. Thank you, New Mexico State. Hi, I'm Anthony Smith, Strategic Executive Producer and Lead Economist here at FreightWaves. Lately, there's been a lot going on in the economy. We've had a pandemic, we've had unemployment, there's a lot going on, and that's what this show's about. Crystal, we're doing a show, right? So we're gonna do a show about what's happening in the economy lately, and that's what this is all about. And this happened. So this happened. Biden dropped a third round of stimulus packages. Consumer spending dropped 1% while people were waiting for those stimulus to hit in February. And we got core inflation numbers that show that inflation increased 10%. 1%. 0.1%? What? So we got to get into that. And we also got some employment data. So we're going to get into all of this right now. So it's old news by now that the third stimulus package has hit, and a lot of consumers have received those third checks already. But it doesn't really tell the full story. We saw that consumer spending did kind of dip slightly, but we still have elevated freight volume. So still shows that consumers are spending. But there's a lot to unpack here. When we dive deep into consumer spending, we see that it's primarily within e-commerce. No surprise, thanks Amazon. But we see that there's no surprise around e-commerce spending, and that's going to be a thing in the future. And a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen with inflation. Is there going to be hyperinflation? When is hyperinflation going to be here? When is there going to be inflation? What's going to happen with inflation? Inflation. So typically when we look at inflation, a lot of people look at the core inflation number, and that's going to take things out like energy and food prices because they typically have these volatile swings that don't tell the full story. The Fed uses the PCE index, and that's their personal consumption expenditure index, which moved up 1.6%. Still not a whole lot of movement, and it's only been within that 1 to 1.6% range over the past few months. That also doesn't tell the full story. There's not going to be the traditional type of inflation that many people were expecting, not yet at least. When we're looking at inflation, we have to look all around us. So when we're looking at inflation, there are quite a few factors that we have to consider besides just the money supply. We have to look at the economic output. We have to look at the velocity or the exchange of money. Are people just saving? And we have to look at the other thing, employment, which has been very weird lately. We've seen things like the initial jobless claims have, miscounting, these crazy wild swings in these revisions, and fraud attempts. That's sus. When you look at the employment data, there's been a lot going on, not just those fraudulent attempts, not just the misclassification of workers, but a lot of miscalculations. I mean, we're looking at different segments, different reports, and they're all kind of misleading in a sense. We see that unemployment or the unemployment rate has dropped down to 6%, which is really cool because it was a lot higher during the peak of the pandemic, but does it tell the full story? Or is employment worse than what it really is? I don't have that answer right now. I'm just a mere freight economist. I'm more than a freight economist. I am an economist that doesn't have full access to the data, but who does? There's a lot that's going on right now, and we might not get the full story until months or maybe years from now that really show what employment or the situation around it was. But I'm not going to get into that right now. What we're going to get into is how that employment level kind of eliminates some of the traditional inflation that we might expect to see. When we're looking at different types of inflation, we have to look around us at what's been moving right now. And that's going to be in the form of assets. Looking at the stock market, looking at Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, looking at housing prices, which has also been affected by framing material and inventory, but that's a whole nother show that we can get into. Look at all around you. That's where the inflation is right now. And it's not stopping. It's going through the roof, and a lot of people aren't talking about it. And that's weird. But it kind of makes sense when you think about it. I mean, if you're unemployed or you're receiving unemployment benefits or you've gotten these stimulus packages and you're not sure about your employment status, maybe you don't want to spend your money. Maybe you might want to save a little bit more. So that explains why the velocity of money is down. But that also explains why people might be putting their money in assets that are expected to grow in value. So when you're looking at the stock market, the S&P 500, the GameStop run-up, it kind of makes sense why people are turning to these things that are going to make them feel a little bit more safe or potentially make more money during this time of the pandemic. And that's really where the core of all the inflation is right now. And I'm not saying that the hyperinflation or that we're out of the woods just yet, because we're not. We still have a long way to go. We have the CDC regulations, we have vaccines, we have economies open back up, and with the Pfizer and Moderna, let me stay in my lane. Are you guys gonna do that every time I say stay in my lane? I like it. And so let me stay on track. Got you guys. When we're looking at the overall economy, we're not out of the woods just yet. There are people much more smarter than me, you included, I'm sure, that are going to be working on this problem, on how to reopen the economy. When we're looking at a state-by-state basis, when we're looking at different regions of the world, and it's not just going to be one size fits all. We're seeing different states take different approaches, and I don't know what the right answer is, but I do know we have to be very careful with the solution. My job is going to be looking at different sectors and different segments of the economy, and one of the ones that's really being very weird is the manufacturing segment. Let's look at that. All right, there's something going on in the economy and no one's talking about it. And it's so weird. It's manufacturing. Manufacturing has been gaining momentum and that's awesome. It's really cool. We should have a lot more manufacturing in the US and it's great. It's expanding. But the thing that no one's talking about is the prices. And it's only a matter of time until those prices upstream at the manufacturing level move downstream. We're looking at the ISM PMI. It shows that it's expanding. But we're looking at our flatbed outbound tender rejection index, although that is survey data, our flatbed outbound tender rejection index is tangible data. And it shows that these volumes are increasing, or at least the capacity is tightening. And a lot of the times that goes hand in hand. But when we're looking at that, it shows that there is movement, but no one is talking about the prices. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but I am saying this is something we need to watch because as I mentioned, inflation right now is a lot on the asset side. When we're looking around the economy, there's a lot of signals and a lot of things that we have to take into account. And it's not an easy job, and people like me watch it and try to guess at what's going to happen. And a lot of times we're wrong. I'm not saying that we're out of the clear yet or we're out of the woods, but I'm saying that we have a long way to go and we shouldn't ignore the signs. I know we've had a pandemic, but we still have a lot more work to do. So that's been the economy lately. Thank you so much for watching and thank you to the crew. Thanks Crystal and Aaron and Ethan and I think Fraser's somewhere around there. Got the best crew in the game, but that's gonna do it. See you all next episode. Bye. Get the camera off me. Stop.